Star panel return top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. And Radio 2 listeners got more than they bargained for when Arsenal legend Ian Wright used his guest appearance to make an emotional defence of women in what some are calling an obvious nod to the gender debate. So, without specifically talking about the trans lobby, he told agreeing co-host Vernon Kay how women's rights needed to be protected before momentarily pausing to say his people would go crazy for bringing the subject up live on air. It's a fascinating listen.
And it just kind of reaffirmed everything what I think about the most precious of our species, of any species, that is the woman. And how much, with everything what's going on, Vernon, I'm not going to go into it because obviously my people will go crazy, what's happening to women in the world, in the whole world, and we mustn't forget. There's a world what they're growing up into, which makes me worry.
And it's crazy. It's 2023. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not 1902.
No.
You know, and we're still facing all the issues that you've mentioned off air, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
It's like, how are we as a society and how are we as humans going to move on and develop and progress if we're not learning?
That was exactly.
So we know what they're saying without saying it, which sparked criticism for both Wrighty and Vernon for not being braver. Listen to this.
Talking about something that's happening to women. Something's changing for women. It's really bad for women globally right now. What could that possibly be? What is the point of you waxing lyrical about how you love women, how you should treat us nice, and blah, 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 and stuff you're saying off air? Quite frankly, it's not good enough. I'm sorry. Speak clear and say what's going on. Gender ideology is destroying women's rights.
Of course, you know, I believe BBC stars should never wade into politics, but if these two were going to put their head above the parapet, surely they should have been able to do it without the fear of being cancelled by their bosses and the usual woke mob. So, Carol Malone, this one has really divided opinion. Do you think they should have just had the balls, I'll say that ironically, to actually say, women's spaces are being erased. The trans lobby is going too far.
I had no idea what Vernon Kay was talking. He could have been talking about anything there. I mean, I thought that was a real wimp out, that. I mean, I think Ian Wright was
scared.
But you know, Vernon Kay, why would you expect him to come out with that kind of opinion? He's just got his job on Radio 2. He's not going to endanger that. He's not going to say anything. Ian Wright, I expected a bit more of. Do you remember Ian Wright came out very much in support of Gary Lineker?
Went on strike, in fact, to support Gary Lineker.
So I'd have expected a bit more of him, but...
And yet he's worried what his people are going to say.
But, you know, everyone has to speak out, because if you don't, the only voice you're going to hear is the people from Stonewall who are trying to cancel women altogether. Women's rights don't matter to Stonewall. You know, they're trying to control what we think, what we say. They want to obliterate words like mother, and what's the word they want to use for mother? Birth provider or something? Breastfeeding. Chest feeding. It's outrageous that they're trying to... They're gaslighting women all the time. So men like...
I know, but shouldn't they just say it, though, Andrea? Isn't that the point? Because it was so mealy-mouthed. As Carol says, lots of people didn't even understand what they were getting at.
Exactly. It was pointless saying it because it was lost on so many people. Definitely.
Completely lost.
And I just think it demonstrates how sad society has got, that these lobby groups are far more stronger, and the silencing
freedom
people.
of speech in the UK is under attack. We all know it. We all know it. Benjamin Butterworth.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've reinvented your views, because you spent all that time complaining about Gary Lineker, who does the same job as Ian Wright.
I made it very clear in the
having
intro,
political opinions outside of his BBC work, and now you're sat there saying that Ian Wright should have been getting into one of the most contentious political debates while on BBC Radio 2.
No, but Gary Lineker gets away with it because he's got the same views as the majority of the BBC.
No, you could hardly use the phrase "gets away with it."
And by the way,
never ending.
But by the way,
point is,
Benjamin, can I just interrupt you for 1 second? I'll let you respond.
I'd rather you didn't.
But there is nothing controversial, by the way, about saying that a woman is an adult human female. There is nothing controversial about it. And the fact that you believe that is even a controversial view tells me how far the left have gone down the rabbit hole of denialism and delusion.
Well, I mean, look, controversy doesn't denote right or wrong. Controversy is by the reaction. And clearly, it would have been a very dangerous thing.
What's a woman?
Where is this going?
No, what's a woman?
But what is that?
What is a woman?
Well, I'm sat next to two.
Right. No. What's the definition of a woman?
Well, I don't know. What are you getting at? I don't...
No, just it's such a simple question. What's a woman?
Is it a biological thing for you, or is it a
Well,
gender
obviously,
thing?
there are people who are biologically women, and there are people who are transgender women who self-identify
Because
as
what is
women.
a woman? Really simple question. It's basic. Keir Starmer
You're
even
doing
answered
Keir
it
Starmer
this
right
week.
now. I was going to say, come on.
Can a woman have balls?
Well, you do.
Can a woman have a penis?
But the point...
No, it's a yes or a no.
It's not, because...
It is.
Because if you were to say...
It really is.
No, it's not, because...
Well, you haven't
if
been
you
able
were
to define what a woman is.
No, because you're trying to take black and white and apply it to the reality
it is
of
black
human
and white.
existence.
Even Slippery
which is
Starmer
that
now says it's an adult human female.
If you were to say that... you would be arguing that transgender women simply don't exist, because clearly someone who is
Are a
Trans woman, yeah.
a transgender person who has not yet had the opportunity to physically go through
Do
the
you
process
think there's any
is
difference?
obviously going to
Do
fit
you
into
think
that
there's
category
any
for a
difference
period.
between women and trans women?
Well, clearly there's some difference because one's a trans woman, they're having a slightly different experience. But look, the idea that Ian Wright should sit there and be saying any of those things, your opinion or my opinion, on Radio 2 is completely inappropriate. And I think you're a total hypocrite for trying to call on him to do that when you lampoon Gary Lineker.
I didn't. I think I made it.
You just said that you didn't have the balls to go and say it.
No. I think I made it very clear in my introduction that BBC presenters should actually not be talking about politics whatsoever. But thanks to what Lineker
but then you undermine
and
that
his
30 seconds.
woke
Yeah.
did,
You
those
supported
rules have been
what
thrown out the
Lineker
window.
I would never support someone giving their opinions on BBC.
You supported
Outside of
Lineker.
it, it's fine.
You supported Lineker tweeting that stuff.
Yeah, you didn't
You
think
did
it should be
support.
sacked.
Yeah, and I've always said that if you're not a news or current affairs presenter, then outside of your BBC work, you should be able to give your opinion. But I would never claim that when they are doing their job at the BBC, that they should be doing that.
Well, then they shouldn't have had the
And I
discussion
listen to
at all.
Radio 2 all the time. There is no politics on Radio 2.
Well, there just was.
It's a pretty,
just was.
it's a very Middle England,
But
mundane,
also,
entertaining
take
channel.
the BBC out of this argument. Men with a high profile should be speaking
Yes.
out on behalf of women wherever.
Yes.
Never mind the BBC.
Yeah.
Everywhere they should be.
Yep.
They should be
Couldn't agree
acknowledging
more.
what is happening to women. That women's
Yep.
spaces are being infringed. Their rights
Yes.
are being infringed.
And you know, I've been doing it for a long time on this show. You get a huge amount of incoming as a man doing that. But I think it is absolutely critical that men do not shy away and think this is a women's issue. So actually, what I would like to hear from Ian Wright, not on the BBC, on another platform, I would actually like to hear what he meant. Don't worry about what
But
your
you know,
people are
you
going to
will-
say. Honestly, Ian, don't worry about your people. They're woke. They're pathetic. You're rich enough,
Dan,
you're
you will
famous enough to say what you think.
There's lots of men, and I suspect Vernon Kay is one of them, who will never raise their heads above the parapet because they care too much about their careers and where they are and what they're earning.
Politicians like that as well, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. They will never raise their heads above the. But someone like Wrighty could and should.
Yeah. Well, let's hope he does. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Dame Andrea Jenkins, thank you so much. But coming up, with the NHS and Labour-run Wales seeing a huge 40% rise of patients seeking treatment in England, is this a sign of things to come under a Labour government in Westminster? My superstar panel will return to debate that soon. But next, as this moment where an autistic girl is dragged from her home for calling a female cop a lesbian shocks the nation, have the police lost the moral plot for arresting this teenager for a hate crime? Our very own Neil Oliver live on this next.